Hello guys, I'm back. Lone Vic here again after a brief hiatus. I'm back with new games, new how to play videos, new solo playthroughs and new reviews on my channel. I hope you're happy with that, and today we are starting my comeback with Revive, a game from Aporta Games for 1 to 4 players, which also includes a campaign mode. And in this game, you will be trying to rebuild a world after an ecological cataclysm or an ice age where everything is frozen, and you're trying to retrieve the land, revive, revitalize the land for you to use again and for your tribe to survive and thrive in those hostile conditions. In this video, I will explain to you how to set up this game for all player counts. I will explain to you the multiplayer rules for the game, and on my channel you'll be also able to find a video with a solo playthrough where I go through the solo rules, and you'll be able to see how well I fare in a solo game of Revive. If you like what I'm doing here in my channel after my comeback and you would like to support what I'm doing here, you know what the like button is. You can click the subscribe and ring the notification bell to be notified about new videos on my channel. And also in the description to this video there is a link if you feel like buying me a cup of coffee. And right now let's dive into the setup of Revive. Okay guys, so as you can see, I've got the main board already set up, and it's one-sided. You don't need a different board for lower player counts or something like that. I've got also my player board, and I have a tribe already chosen, the Nadir, Revive the Land. Those are those kind of maybe green ecological kind of guys. And this board can be placed anywhere in your play area, but there is a special indentation here in the player board to connect this to the other, but in my viewport I don't have the room, so I'm placing it over here. So those are the main game components. Now let's focus on the game board for now. The game comes with 5 starting area tiles, and you can recognize them by this S symbol on the reverse. You need to shuffle them and place them in these 5 spaces marked with the S on the board, neighboring the crater, in a random order and in a random orientation. So this is what I'm going to do now. Now in the box there are also 25 area tiles which have a reverse like this, and they look similarly on the other side. Those are the normal area tiles, and you should shuffle all 25 of those and place them in all the remaining spaces on the board, which I will right now do as I speed up the movie a bit so that it doesn't take so long. Like so. And now you have those 4 corners which are uncovered on the map. And for these, the game provides these 5 large location tiles, and you should randomly select 4 of those and place them random side up in each of the corners. Like this. This will mean that one of those large location tiles will return to the box. Shuffle the citizen card deck and place it face down next to the board, revealing 5 citizens. Take the 3 sets of machine tokens, the green ones, the yellow ones, and the gray ones, shuffle them and place them somewhere near the board, face down, and uncover 3 machines from each of the color sets. Take the stack of slot module tokens, which look like this, and place them somewhere near the board, face down after shuffling of course, and uncover 5 of those face up to form a market. I've put mine over there. Shuffle all of the crate tokens provided with the game and put them in a face down stack somewhere near the board. Place the energy markers in a supply pile somewhere near the board as well. Also near the board you should place 2 action cubes. Take the stack of the 2-point minor artifacts and place them in the designated place on the board, and cover the stack with this 4-point endgame tile on top. If you are playing a solo version of the game, do not place the endgame tile, just put it back in the box. And lastly, take the major artifact tiles that you can see here and take a look at the reverse and distribute them according to player count. So in a one-player game, you would distribute only the ones with 1+ number on the reverse. In a two-player game with the 2+, in a three-player game 3+, and in a four-player game you would distribute all of them. I will distribute them as if it were a two-player game right now. So all the 2 and 1+ go on the board. The colors of the artifacts I will mention are important for the gameplay, but you shouldn't worry that there are, for example, 2 yellows and 3 purples and 3 grays, so that the numbers are not equal. And this is the end of the setup of the main board and the main game. Now we will have to focus on the player board for a moment. Now, mind you that if you're not playing a campaign game, you should place this tribe board with the sun icon facing up, because on the reverse you have a tribe board with the moon symbol over here. So in non-campaign games, we are using the sun side of the tribe board. Each player takes one green, yellow, and gray tracker provided and places it on the respective machine tracks in the spaces marked with a 1. So the yellow number 1, green and gray number 1 machines. Each player also takes one energy token from the common pool and places it in this energy storage space. Each player takes the one switch token that's provided with the game and places it here so that the green lights are visible and the red are covered. The game also comes with starting citizens in 4 decks, which you can recognize by this letter A, B, C, or D on the left side of the cards. Each of those decks consists of 6 cards. Randomly give each player a single deck, so one player will get deck A, one will get deck B, and so forth and so on. And place this deck in this indentation next to the player board. Each player then shuffles their starting citizens, takes 3 which will form their hand, and the remaining 3 will return here, and they are called in hibernation. Each player is also dealt out one random artifact card, which they should keep face down next to their play area, and we'll talk about why do we have them and what do we do with them later. You can also give each player one player aid card, or simply place one in the middle of the table for everybody to access. I will place it here, but I won't be using it too much. And finally, each player has to take care of the pieces that they have in the game of their own color. The game comes with 20 of those blue progress markers for each player, and each of those progress markers has to be placed in those hexagonal or circular spaces on the player board, and 5 of them go here onto the tribe board on those fields with stars. So I will speed up and cover all of those spaces right now. There we go. All the spaces are now filled. Each player also gets 4 resource markers to track crystals, gears, books, and food. You place each marker in the indented space on the bottom of each respective track, and depending on which player you are in the turn, you get starting resources. The first player gets only 1 crystal, the second player gets 1 crystal and 1 gear, the third player advances the crystal, gear, and book resources by 1, while the fourth player will get 1 of each of the 4 resources. If it's a solo game, you start the game with 1 crystal only, as if you were the first player. There are 2 pawns in player colors, which you place on the board here on the bottommost space of the hibernation track and on the topmost space of the points track. Each player also gets 7 meeples in their player color, which you place on those meeple contours with 2 victory points each on your tribe board. And finally, each player has 8 buildings of their player color, 5 small ones and 3 large ones. The large ones should go on those spaces on the bottom side of the tribe board, and the small ones should go on those 5 designated spaces above the large buildings. And now, finally, we are set up and ready to play a game. If this is a solo game, take one of the action cubes and place it in the 0 space on the track over here. And if it's a multiplayer game, we're already done. So now let's talk about the general game overview when we are playing Revive. So the goal of the game in Revive is to uncover the map, explore the map, build up your settlement, your tribe to control the territory, and collect the artifacts that we have here. The game ends once the last artifact from here, from the top of the board, is collected. There are no more remaining. The player who collects the last artifact gets the 4 victory points end game tile from the stack, and if any players after that will have to collect an artifact, they will just take one of those minor artifacts with 2 victory points each. After the game end is triggered by one player by taking the last artifact and the end game tile, or other players perform one last round where they can do something and also collect some minor artifacts, and then the game ends and we calculate points. There are 3 basic resources in the game: gears, books, and food. And whenever you gain a resource of that type, you simply increase the stack, and you can't, as you can see, have more than 6 of each of the resources. Crystals, on the other hand, are a universal resource, and you can change them during the game into any of the normal resources, and you can store maximum 3 crystals, which means that if you already have 3 crystals and you collect a 4th one, you can automatically increase any of the regular resources by 1, as if you automatically change the crystal into that given resource. On the board and in the game, you will see also 2 types of victory points. You will see the blue symbols for victory points, like for example here on the area tiles or sometimes on some machines. Blue victory points are scored immediately and they are increasing your amount of points. And as you travel on this point track, you'll be crossing spaces which will enable you to collect a crate token or an artifact from the display. The purple symbols for victory points, which are located, for example, on this track or on some other game elements on your tribe board, usually mean that you will get those points once the end game is triggered and you're calculating the points at the end of the game. This progress track over here is the place where all of those progress markers will go once they are taken off of your board. So you will be placing them from the bottom and going up. And at the end of the game, the lowest number visible, not covered by a progress marker, will be your points scored on the progress track. Once you cover a symbol on the progress track, like for example the energy token or artifact token, you take an additional energy token into your supply or you collect an artifact from the board. The most important concept in the game, however, is the concept of range, which we will be using throughout the game and in most of the actions that we'll be doing. So let's talk about it right now. Range is calculated when you use the explore, build, or populate actions. And when you are using those actions, you must pay for the range. At the beginning of the game, the range is counted from this middle space called the chasm for all players. And once you've placed a building or a population figure on the map, your range is being counted from this nearest piece that you have, ignoring the chasm completely. If you, for example, want to build a building here or place a population marker over here, you need to count in the beginning of the game the range from the chasm. And this would be range 1 because you have 1 space between your designated space and the chasm. And for each of those range spaces, you will need to pay 1 food in order to be able to perform the action. So you only count each space you go through. You do not count the origin or the destination spaces, right? Remember that because this is important. So for example, if you were starting the game and you were counting your range from the chasm and you wanted to build a building here, your range would be 0 because this is a neighboring tile and you wouldn't have to pay any food for this. And you may count your range through occupied spaces, but never through unexplored areas. And that's basically it. Additionally, the game comes with a campaign deck that you can see I have not yet even opened, and this is a campaign which will be a 5-part game of Revive. And if you are not playing a campaign but a regular game, do not open this deck and do not take a sneak peek. And also in the box you will find a few punch boards which are campaign only, so do not look at them to not spoil yourself anything, and do not punch those unless told so by the game. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we can dive into the how to play and talk about all the actions that you can do in a game of Revive. Okay, so beginning with the starting player of the game, each player can take either 2 actions or hibernate during their turn, which is described over here on the player aid. You've got the 5 actions over here and you've got hibernate over here. And after the player does the 2 actions or 1, they don't have to do 2 if they don't want to or can't, or the player hibernates, the game passes to the next player and it goes circularly around the table until the end game is triggered. The 2 action cubes in a multiplayer game are used to remember which actions you've already performed in this game, because sometimes during the game one action can take a very long time because it triggers a lot of different chain effects and you will forget what you were doing. But still, you can do the same action twice in a round. There is no limitation. So let's talk about the actions first. The first action that you can take is play a card. And in the beginning of the game, in your hand, you drew 3 cards, which are your starting citizens. And those citizen cards, as you can see, are divided into 2 kind of sections, the bottom and the top section. And when performing the action of playing a card, you play a card into one of the vacant slots on your player board. If you play the card into the top slot, you slide it like so and you perform the top half of the card. If you are using the bottom slot, you slide the card in like so and you perform the bottom action of the card. This side slot over here is locked until you uncover this technology on your player board, in which case this slot is available to be used. And here you can put the card either with the top side visible or the bottom side visible. So let's call this slot a universal one. The effects of each of those cards and symbols are explained very well in the rulebook, so we won't be going through those. Additionally, when it comes to the slots and the cards that you can play, we have to talk about these slot modules that you have here. Now, when the game tells you to gain a slot module, you take one of the slot modules on the display. And once you take it, you can put it in any of these slots, those indentation spaces on your player board. There are a few things linked to that. Once you cover this green tick icon, you trigger the slot module immediately and collect the resources on it. In those empty spaces, you do not do that. But after I put a slot in and would gain this 2 food from placing it in this green space, anytime I play a card into this slot that matches to the color or one of the colors, because some of those slot modules, as you can see, can have 2 colors for cards. So if the color matches the color of the slot module triggers again. So if, for example, I had a situation that this slot were occupied like so, if I played a yellow card into this slot, I would trigger all of these modules and gain an additional 5 food. If I placed a green card, I would only get 1 food from this slot. One more thing that you need to know about cards is that once you collect a card from the display, it goes into your hand, so you can use it in the same turn, and some of the cards have this slot symbol on the bottom. And this means that this slot symbol allows you to play another card under this card during your next move, for example. And if the new card played matches the color to this card with the slot, you trigger this card again as well. So it works similarly to the slot modules. If you don't have this slot card symbol over here, each slot on your player board can have only one card at a time. And the effects on the cards can vary a lot. You can be getting resources from the cards, like for example using those symbols. You can have some trades, like for example, if you look at this, you will get the amount of resources of any of the basic kind in the number of meeples that you have on the board, and so forth and so on. You can be ordered to take a slot module by playing a card. You can have this kind of symbol which tells you to advance on the machine track of the respective color. And finally, you can have this star symbol which allows you to trigger the tribe ability. And with the tribe ability, you not only trigger this tribe ability, but you also move one progress marker into your progress track for each time you've triggered the tribe ability. If you have no more progress markers left over here, you just don't do that, but you can still trigger the ability. And some of the tribes have a technology that can augment the tribe ability by some additional skill, which you have to always watch out for. Now, the second action that you can do during your turn is flipping your switch. And when you flip your switch into this red position, you get one basic resource of any kind, and that's it. So I will leave it at that because I will need it for Hibernate. And now let's talk about the three most exciting actions. The first of those being explore. Now, when you explore, you choose a face-down tile on the game board and you pay for range. So, for example, if I choose this tile and I don't have any buildings or meeples on the board, I will be counting my range from the chasm, so this will be range 1. So I have to pay 1 food for the range, and I will have to pay the price on the tile that I've chosen, in this case it's 2 food, in order to gain 1 victory point immediately and get 1 card from the display into my hand, and the display then automatically refreshes. After that, you flip the area tile and you can orient it in any of the 2 directions possible and leave it uncovered. So this is basically the explore action. The fourth action right now is the build action. Now, in the build action, you choose a sand space which is vacant, so there are no buildings of yours or any other players there, and you can place a building there. Now, big buildings cost 5 gear resources and small buildings cost 3 gear resources. You have to pay for the building, whether large or small, and you also have to pay for range. Remember about that. So for example, again, if I'm counting from the chasm, because I don't have any of my own buildings or population on the board yet, and I want to place a building here, I would have to pay 3 gears for a small building or 5 for a large building, and also 1 food for the range. And after I pay those 3 gears and 1 food, I can place this building over here, and I collect all bonuses from the neighboring tiles. What that means is that, let's make it better. If I place my building here, I would be able to advance the yellow machine track by 1 space, the green machine track by 2 spaces, and the gray machine track by 1 space. If I placed a large building over here, the large building doubles all of the rewards from those advancements. So I would have 2 advances on the yellow, 4 on the green, and 2 on the gray machine track. Also, when you are placing a building, there are water spaces that, if you place a building neighboring to, will grant you a bonus, but the large buildings do not double this bonus, And also, if you place another of your buildings near the same water space, you don't get the bonus again. So those bonuses are a one-time thing. And lastly, you can place buildings in the neighborhood of these crystals. And if you place a building near a crystal, you will get one crystal resource, or in the case of large building, the reward will be doubled and you will get 2 crystals per symbol. So remember, never more than one building on a space. Buildings can be only built on sand, and if any player explores an area tile so that a new terrain or water space ends up uncovered and adjacent to a building, that bonus is triggered again. So, hypothetically, if I had my building over here in the game already paid and built, I have collected this one machine advancement, and then somebody, not necessarily me, would explore this tile, uncover it, and then place it like so, instead of this direction, I would automatically get one advancement on the gray machine track, because my building now neighbors it. Now, I've talked a lot about the machine tracks, so maybe it's time right now to take a look at those. As you can see, those advancements can go a long way on those tracks in the same colors. Now, once your token, like for example this gray one, enters a space which is adjacent to this circular or hexagonal space, you can take the progress marker and add it to your progress track and have this machine uncovered. Some machines require only one of the tokens neighboring to be uncovered. Some machines, like for example this one, requires, for example, the gray to be on number 3 and the yellow to be on number 7 in order to be able to uncover those. These circular spaces, for example, if I already had this advancement or crossed those and could uncover this space, some of these machines, those circular spaces, already have an imprinted effect and some don't. If you uncover a space with a question mark, you choose one of the machines from the display of the appropriate color and place it in this space. And how do machines work, you might ask? Anytime during your turn, you may use any of the energy tokens in your supply to trigger any of the machines with one energy token. Each machine can only get one energy token, so you can trigger it once during your, let's say, round, and they will be cleaned up only when you hibernate. Now, the hexagonal spaces, like for example this one, which will be uncovered when you have 5 on the gray machine track and at least 10 on the yellow one, are spaces which give you instant rewards, like for example collect one artifact from the board. And once a pawn, a marker, reaches the end of its color track, each further advancement will grant you a resource of the same matching color. So the yellow one will grant you 1 food, the green one will grant you a book, and the gray one will grant you 1 gear. And also, as you can see, those hexes over here can trigger endgame scoring bonuses. Okay, so let's reset my machine tracks right now and let's get back to it. And the last action that you can use in the game is Populate. And Populate uses these meeples on your tribe board in order to place them on the game board in these location spaces, the one that look like ruined cities. Do not be confused. You can't place meeples anywhere else on the board apart from these location spaces. You have to pay the cost of books that's printed next to the meeple, and you have to start with the lowest meeple and then go through the second row and then through the third row. So for example, I have to place this meeple first, then I could choose any of those 3 meeples, like for example this one, and then I could choose either this, this, or this, because it's unlocked from the lower space. So this is kind of a decision tree. And each of those meeples taken down from here triggers the effect, the technology, or the ability that you'll be using once or passively throughout the game. It differs, and it's all described in the rulebook. And those meeples also enable you to count the range from where you are on the board, and that's their main function. but also the meeples can be placed in these large locations. You can't build buildings in those large locations, but you can place meeples, obviously paying for range and everything. And those meeples will be counted against those scoring conditions at the end of the game. So if I have one meeple here, I will get 1 victory point at the end of the game per each advancement on the gray machine track. And for example, here a meeple would give me 2 victory points for any water space neighboring my buildings. And here I would get 2 victory points for every energy token that I've collected, and so forth and so on. And a very important rule to remember is that each location space can be, whether it's small or large, can be populated by any number of players. So every player in the game can have a meeple here or here, but each location can only have 1 meeple of a player's color. So I wouldn't be able to put 2 of my meeples here in order to score this 2 times, just to remember. And apart from the main actions, because now we've discussed 5 of those main actions, apart from the main actions, there are 3 actions that you can always do in your game during your turn. The 3 actions are very simple. The free action is trading a crystal for any other resource, which you can always do automatically. The free action is using a machine by paying the electricity token on it and triggering its effect. And a free action is opening a crate that you've collected, for example, for crossing these spaces. So when you collect a crate, you put it face down near your board, you can take a look at what it has and you can automatically flip it to get the reward, or you can, for example, decide that the reward is good for later and you will get back to this crate and use it sometime else. And now, guys, let's talk about hibernating. So in your turn, if you do not want to or cannot perform any of the 5 actions, at least one of them, you are forced to hibernate. Now, hibernation means that you will collect all of the cards that you have in your hibernate space and take them to your hand, and you'll be able to use them in your next rounds. All the cards that you've already played over here are emptied from the slots and they go into the hibernate space. You collect all of the energy tokens from the machines that you've used already and place them back in storage so that you can use them again later. You flip the switch up from the red position into the green and you advance once on the hibernation track, getting the respective reward. If you're at the last space of the hibernation track, you cannot advance anymore, but you can still hibernate. And this is basically it, ladies and gentlemen. This is the whole game of Revive. I think I've covered enough rules for you to be able to figure out how to play this game. And if you have any questions about the iconography on the machine, on the machines or the machine slots, on the cards or on the modules, you can always ask in the comments, but the rulebook explains everything pretty well. Now let's talk about the game end. So let's remind ourselves that the game ends once a player collects the last of the artifacts and collects the endgame tile. Then each other player has one more turn and then we score points. And the points are scored from various places. For example, the lowest visible number on your progress track is your number of points. You get points for unlocking technologies. So those are the points printed under the meeples that you've taken off of your tribe board. You get points for each large location scoring rule where you have a meeple of your color. If you have an end game card bonus unlocked on a machine track, you get this. For example, this means that you get 2 victory points per a yellow card in your collection, which is not a starting card, and is the same respectively for green and gray. You get 4 points if you are the player who ended the game and has the end game tile. You get 2 points for each minor artifact collected after the game and triggered happened. You get 1 point for any 5 remaining resources rounded down, and you score points from your artifact card and your major artifacts. And this is where the colors of those artifacts start being important, because each player has a different artifact card and has a different scoring rule. For example, on my card, the purple artifacts will give me 1 victory point per each of those flask icons anywhere I can have them. They are usually on machine tokens, sometimes on cards. So I would get 1 point per each flask, per each artifact token, which means that if I have 2 purple artifacts collected in the game, I would score this twice, so I would get 2 points per each flask. My yellow artifact tokens would give me 1 point per each energy I've collected, and again, if I have 2 yellow ones, I would get this 2 times. And this gray artifact would give me 1 point per each neighboring water space. So this is an asymmetrical scoring mechanism, and after that the player with the most points wins the game. The ties are broken in the favor of the player with the most remaining unscored resources, and then if the tie persists, the tie is broken in favor of the player who advanced furthest on their 3 machine tracks combined. So I guess that this is a thank you and a roundup for this video. Thanks for sticking with me and watching this until the end. This was Revive, a how to play video for the multiplayer version of the game. Stay tuned to my channel to check out the rules for the solo play and my solo playthrough as well in the same video, and also very soon a review of this game. My name was Lone Vic, this was Revive, and well, if you want to support what I'm doing here on this channel, you can click the like button, hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell to be notified about new videos. In the description to this video, you will also find a link if you'd like to buy me a cup of coffee. And I hope that this video was helpful to you to understand and learn how to play a game of Revive. Stay tuned, have a great day, and see you soon in another of my videos here on my channel. Bye bye.